Hola! Welcome back. Another episode of Go Find Yourself. JD Gagnon here. My good friend, Kiara, what is up?
Episode 75.
75. That's like some sort of platinum anniversary or some nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, what'd you get me?
Nothing.
Typical.
No, but I did order a big gold chain.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, you've got to get the RBL emblem, though. Otherwise,
Yeah, I know. Right now I just got a tiger emblem, but we'll
And-
see. I'm gonna work on the RBL one. Anyways, what we got lots of shit to talk about today. Obviously, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, super exciting. What are we talking about on episode
Middle
75?
of the news week. Well, we're going to talk about stablecoins because I can't help myself. And then after we talk about stablecoins, we have to talk about CBDCs because it's only natural. And since both of those things have to do with regulation, we will then talk about crypto mining regulation in Texas and why everyone is leaving Canada because of our regulations. And then after that, I've got a little bit of DGen news so we can talk about Jimbos. If you don't know what Jimbos is, you will. And staking, there's a couple things coming up about liquid staking and how staking is not going well. And we'll just kind of touch on it. We'll visit it, see if you're interested.
Sweet! Let's go! All right, welcome back. As you can tell, I'm not wearing any merch today, mainly because
On Twitter Spaces, they might hear that as just wearing
too
nothing.
lazy. Yeah, BCP and whoever else is listening, I see BCP there. What's up, brother? I am actually doing the stream completely naked.
Nude. It's nude.
Super strange, but you're missing out if you're not seeing the video. Maybe. Maybe you're better off not seeing the video.
Maybe you're not missing out. Maybe our imagery is better than our.
Yeah, let's roll with that.
All right.
Okay, where do you want to start?
I'm going to start with the debt ceiling. So we're going to talk about stable coins. Essentially, people are worried about the stability of the US dollar. We've talked about this in terms of de-dollarization, BRICS, balkanization of currency, so on and so forth. But in addition to that, what happens if the USD becomes depegged? What happens to USDC? What happens to stable coins if their fiat doesn't go so well? So Circle is talking about what kind of measures they might take. I don't know. Tell me about the U.S. debt ceiling and why that matters.
Well, how long do we got for this one? So the U.S. debt ceiling is unbelievable, to be honest. We're at somewhere between 31 and 33 trillion dollars in debt currently, which is 100.
Too much.
Yeah, it's insane. which is like 100 and some percent of total GDP. 125 or 130% of total GDP, which is kind of crazy. So like the magic number that economists always are starting to get really worried is when your debt reaches 100% of GDP, because it's generally a downward spiral from there. The interest payments alone on the 30 trillion, I don't remember exactly what they are, but they're high, like 5 or 6 trillion just in interest payments on that debt. And then if you factor in what the actual net take of the federal government is, that becomes like 60 to 80% of all expenditures of the federal government, which is like kind of insane. So anyways, the reason that this, every few years, this debt ceiling thing, they keep kicking the ball down the road and they keep agreeing to increase the debt ceiling so that they can print more money and keep the government.
According to Investopedia, the debt ceiling has been revised, raised, or extended 78 times since 1960.
Yeah. And like this was put in to stop exactly this, which is indiscriminate printing of money. And so obviously during COVID and of late, the US government was just printer went brrr, like it was shooting out hundreds at anybody that had open hands, or millions or billions really. And we've had all these forever wars that we've had to finance and all of these other things in the US. It's kind of crazy. But so they come to this hilarious thing for the last like 4 months. The US government has been arguing with each other. This is actually a moot point now because in theory they came to an agreement, but it's important to talk about why this is maybe concerning. So the Republicans who control the House and the Democrats who control the Senate and the presidency have to agree because all three chambers need to ratify debt ceiling increases. And so they're at a bit of a stalemate. Biden says he wasn't negotiating, period, end of story, on his budget, which was increasing the debt by $2 trillion additional dollars a year. So we're running at a significant deficit. His argument was, well, it's less of a deficit than last year. And it's like, well, if you maxed out your credit cards last year and then you only half maxed them out yet again this year, on top, like if you added only 50% more debt on top of that, are you doing good? Like, is that a good thing? Yeah, you have less of a deficit than last year, but you don't need a pat on the ass for that one because you fucked up the debt last year. So anyways, that's his whole argument. He's like, I'm not negotiating. Republicans are like, cool. Well, we're not passing a bill that increases the debt ceiling, and it was a bit of a stalemate. Eventually, they agreed to increase it. This is like as of yesterday. They've agreed to increase it. The Democrats are unhappy. The Republicans are unhappy, which usually means that it was probably a good deal, a pretty good middle ground deal if both sides are pissed off. And if any one side is happy, then the other side got the shaft. In this case, both sides think that they got the deal. Anyways, why is this relevant for stablecoins? This is a really long preamble to the actual point here. This is relevant because if they didn't increase the debt ceiling, what happens is technically the government defaults on their debt payments, which they've never done before. And if they default on their debt payments, then we get downgraded. The country gets downgraded. We already have been downgraded slightly, but this would be like a fairly sizable downgrading. If that's a word. And so what does that mean? That means that it could potentially have a significant negative impact on the value of the US dollar relative to other currencies. Why does this matter for stablecoins? Because a lot of people, it will almost be like a bank run. What would happen is a whole bunch of people are going to be trying to sell out of USDC as fast as possible. And although Circle can redeem USDC or US dollars for USDC, most of the transactions are not in people that are like most of the USDC is in the hands of people that didn't originally lock up US dollars to mint it. It's made its way through DeFi. Like most of us have USDC and none of us have locked up any fiat at Circle. And so the problem there is we all just would go and sell to hedge risk. We saw this with when they were worried about BUSD. We've seen this quite a few times where unfortunately there's a contagion that you just can't control. And because of the way that AMMs work, that contagion can cause catastrophic issues, and then it's repricing of the asset. Anyways, there's just a whole bunch of things that can happen. You can see a lot of inefficiencies in how the AMMs work relative to stablecoins in this environment. So it could have been quite problematic, actually. But that's always going to be the case. Like they're always concerned about the credit worthiness. If you're a fiat-backed stablecoin, you're worried about the value of said fiat. Like that's the concern. And so there's not too many things that can dethrone the US dollar, so to speak. This is one of them. If they default on their debt, kind of a problem. So anyways, they agreed to increase the debt ceiling and keep spending at 2022 levels essentially, which is not really much of a negotiation because 2022 isn't that good of levels, but they wanted to continue to increase them in the budget, and Republicans are like, no.
Okay, so if you hold USDC, you should be paying attention to the debt ceiling. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. If the debt ceiling doesn't in fact get increased, which it should, but nobody's seen the actual bill yet ratifying the agreement, but at least that was as of end of day yesterday. I don't know what happened today, but anyways, interesting. Pay attention to it. Geopolitics and global trade does matter. Obviously, it impacts crypto in many ways. We talk about this a lot. So,
well, I think a lot of people anticipated that by entering the crypto sphere, they would be separating themselves from traditional finance, but also from the ecosystem that TradFi operates within, when actually we're almost more volatile.
We're not disconnected from what happens in the regular economy, and I don't think we ever will be. I mean, no matter what, we're going to have some version of economic impact on the crypto markets, the same way that the macroeconomic situation impacts traditional finance in many ways: interest rates, yields, earnings, dividends. Like there's a million things that are impacted by it. So I think this is no different than any other financial sphere. It's just one that there's a lot of people in an unregulated world managing these protocols in very risky ways. And Circle has had their blunders over time, but they're obviously trying to be proactive as a regulated entity in the United States. We need more of that. We need more proactive management of these types of risks from the protocols and from the different issuers. And I think that's what regulation brings. Regulation brings that requirement, the obligation to at least have some minimum acceptable standard of risk management. And I, for one, welcome that personally.
Okay. Well, you don't welcome CBDCs.
Nope.
So you'll be happy to know that the Digital Dollar Pilot Prevention Act was introduced to Capitol Hill yesterday. Stoked.
Yep. Super big fan of this. We'll have to wait and see. This dark web drug trafficking.
Dark Web Interdiction Act. So the idea here is that they want crypto's involvement in all dark web, like drugs, selling humans, that kind of thing, to be brought to light. This is interesting because we've actually seen quite a bit of news about how crypto is impacting the fentanyl crisis. We talked about that on a previous episode. And so I wonder who had a little bit of a leak that they started making that news preemptive to being introduced to Capitol Hill. But we're seeing these two very different sides of how people want to view crypto being brought to Capitol Hill at the same time.
I mean, just reminding everybody of my position before, as if it matters, but
as if we don't know.
Yeah, as if you don't know, and as if it matters. But I honestly, I mean, there's going to be a certain percentage. Again, don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere between 10 and 15% of all fiat transactions are illicit. Is estimated. It's probably the same in crypto. Obviously, any form of P2P value transfer will have some version of illicit activity. This is no different. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do here, and regulation will do a lot of this with AML and KYC. You don't need a CBDC to prevent this. So that's my point. And I think that's where this bill is going, is that they're using a CBDC to try to convince people that it will avoid all of this shit by giving the government ultimate control and oversight. That's not what's gonna, it will fix that problem. Generally speaking, but it's going to cause a ton of other problems that could just simply be solved by KYC AML.
It's a really nice way to wrap that up. The next one about regulation is Texas. So I'm actually thrilled that Andy has tuned in because I was going to tag Andy in this particular article because Andy is going to know more about it than I am. But essentially, there have been tax breaks for crypto mining in Texas. Those tax breaks have been up to 10% of a tax break for if you are putting power back into the grid somehow. So that's kind of cool. And anyways, they're looking at abolishing all of the potential incentives for crypto mining in Texas, which is kind of counterintuitive because they're usually pretty pro crypto in Texas, as far as I can tell. Like in February, they introduced the idea that they wouldn't tax any crypto transactions in Texas and perhaps bring that to the White House as well. So I'm surprised to see them kind of backpedaling on the crypto mining. Andy, if you have any info on it that you want to share, we're happy to.
Send us a note or jump up. But so there's like, I have a bit of a theory on this one. I think part of it is Texas has had a hell of a time with the strain on their power grid, especially in the winter and stuff, if it gets really cold, which it has for the last few years.
Which is new for them, right?
Pretty new for them, but they also made this like bullshit trend. Well, not bullshit, but they made somewhat of a forced transition to more renewable energy, which is really inconsistent in times of cold weather and so on. And so a lot of it was freezing up and not working. And then they had no energy. I don't know if that's the primary reason for this, but I think it's probably a factor. Now, putting energy back in is kind of an interesting one because these Bitcoin miners put off a ton of heat. And so if you can capture the heat, you can actually re-inject a lot of that energy back into the space. Now, I don't know if it's like cost effective to do that, but I know they were trying to push that as a potential value add. This, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I think this just goes to show everybody's kind of toiling with, how to make certain adjustments, I suppose, to deal with the new technology. And so I think it's good. It's good that they're grappling with it. It's not as funny as it sounds. I think they're just trying to figure out the right path forward. Maybe they didn't, with these tax breaks, it costs them more than they encouraged the tax breaks were to bring new people in. You need more revenue to substantiate the discount. Maybe they didn't get that. And a lot of that could be a function of the market conditions. It's not as profitable right now because Bitcoin is cheaper, US dollar valuation.
I'm also happy to see them regulate before enforce.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't just cracked down and been like, actually, we've changed our minds. So although it might seem unstable and it might be difficult for those who have been mining in Texas, at least they're giving you a little bit of a heads up as opposed to any other crypto regulation in America right now.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has also been fairly anti-CBDC, which I support, of course, and so has Florida. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But yeah, I guess we'll see. All right.
Hey, so talking about stringent regulation, are you ready for Canada?
Yeah, this is yet again another one of those. Canada might have shot their load a little too early by saying everything is a security, because right now, another major.
This isn't that everything is a security issue, though. So Bybit, who we actually talked about yesterday, who expanded into Japan, is upset with the current regulatory strife, as we're calling it. But this wasn't because everything was a security. This was about how businesses had to register themselves. So Canada put in some really strict rules about what your business needed to have to continue to operate in Canada as a crypto business, which included like a particular commissioner of security to be in place and focused on Canada. It included a lot of paperwork, that kind of thing. But that's why, remember, we saw the 3 Canadian companies join forces?
Yes.
As a number of groups have submitted their paperwork, they're getting declined and they don't want to resubmit. So
yeah. I mean, obviously this flows from everything being a security, and there being now compliance requirements from the CSA and IROC. Now, this I think is insight for the rest of the world that until the US makes up their mind, everybody's going to try to avoid accepting this type of regulation. So, I mean,
I don't know why you think it's until the US makes up their mind. Like, people are pulling out of the States too, right?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a different world power in crypto. Like, it's not up to America only.
I'll maybe rephrase that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's just one of those things, I think, that we have to wait and see. Like the US, the reason that I say the US has to figure their life out is because I don't believe anybody's going to accept a securities registration standard unless the US also requires a securities registration standard, because it is the most onerous of the existing standards in both countries, US and Canada. And so although we're excited about all of these countries starting to think about crypto regulation and some of these other things, we have to wait and see what I think some of the bigger ones do. The EU has made a move with MiCA, which is great. But we'll have to see what the US does. Until then, any other country that says everything is a security, in my opinion, is going to have a similar experience as Canada. And that's going to happen in the US. It's going to happen everywhere. I think we're going to see somewhat of consolidation of certain platforms. And I think we'll see some platforms disappear. And I think we'll see others try to live in the fringes, which I don't think will last very long.
We have quite a few listeners today. If any of you are not American and disagree with JD, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, send us a note. Leave us a comment. Fuck, Steve is here too. And Evie's here. What is up?
Yeah,
good to see all you guys.
So the other thing I want to address here is that aside from needing to have a chief compliance officer and a couple of other things that they have to submit paperwork for, groups in Canada are not allowed to have leverage trading, and they're going to be not allowed to, that can't allow users to trade or hold stable coins. This one's super concerning to me as a Canadian. What's the problem with leverage trading? Why would we not like that?
Oh, I mean, I don't know how this is going to last, because they allow forex leverage trading in Canada,
right?
Which
doesn't make any sense.
Arguably could be a bit of a safer market, although everybody uses B-book platforms, which you're not even actually trading. They're just betting against you via leverage. That's a whole other conversation. Leverage is just, it adds exponentially more risk to a situation, right? So a lot of times you're not doing 1x or 2x leverage most often. Most people are doing 50, 100x, in some cases 500x leverage, which is absolutely insane. I mean, the asset price moves a little bit and your entire position can get liquidated, which is obviously not what you want. So that's part of the reason for that one. The stablecoin thing, I think this is just setting it up for a CBDC. Canada's been super excited to control the population yet again. And so they're pushing this CBDC narrative quite a bit. I think the only way to make a CBDC as the default stablecoin in an ecosystem is to outlaw any alternatives. And so that seems like that's what they're trying to do here. I think we'll probably see something similar in the US if they try to push the CBDC thing forward, but we'll have to wait and see.
All right. Have you heard of Jimbo? Jimbo's protocol?
I had not heard of Jimbo until this.
Apparently, most people haven't heard of Jimbo, is what I can tell from the news. They had a hack, 4,000 ETH worth of hack. This is just kind of a big deal because it's about liquidity shifting and how that's essentially how it went on for so long.
Yeah.
But also, I just like to report on any hack so that you don't get wrecked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of late now, but yeah, they got wrecked.
But so that you know what to look for in the next one, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, I don't know anything about Jimbos, but this just goes to show, generally speaking, if you should be researching the protocols that you're going to use. And not that all anonymous projects are crappy or any of that stuff, but you want to do some due diligence. And if you don't know who the founders are, then make sure that you have a lot of other things that lead you to believe that it's a well-managed protocol and that they have the right risk partners and the right security partners and so on. Again, having all of those partners doesn't guarantee anything. We're constantly learning in the space. Even some relatively battle-tested protocols, people find vulnerabilities. But yeah, this one sounds to me like it was probably avoidable and just wasn't.
Especially, so the concept of liquidity shifting, best as I know, is the idea that you can exchange your tokens for another token or a fiat or something to that end. So you have liquidity and you're moving it. It's not like staked or anything to that end. That seems like a really basic thing that we should have under control on a crypto dev.
Yeah, again, I can't give any more technical insight on this because I haven't looked at it at all.
No, it's just interesting to think about is that sometimes even the more simple elements that we think have been tried and true and tested might still be where the vulnerability is, right? Sometimes we have this false sense of security because we see things be successful so often that we don't go back and validate.
Yeah, for sure, right? And it just because a protocol's been out for a certain amount of time does not mean that it's immune to these types of things. Often it's new protocols that have been out for a minute that gives these black hats long enough to figure out a vulnerability. So just because it's been out for a couple of months and hasn't been hacked, I mean, if I was going to go through all the work of hacking, I would wait until I got to a TVL point that I thought was worth it by the time that I try to get all the money out into fiat and be able to actually use it, which is incredibly expensive at this point. But anyways, okay, enough about that. If you've heard of Jimbos, if you're a part of it, go check it out. Make sure you understand what your risk exposure is. More DeFi stuff. What do we got next?
Tenet and Layer Zero have gotten together for liquid staking. The news loves it. They're calling it a liquid staking revolution or liquid staking adoption driver in DeFi ecosystem. Or I don't know, people are super bullish on it. I'm not surprised. Layer Zero has been moving in this direction for quite some time. They're backing a lot of different projects that work with liquidity, obviously. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I mean, liquid staking, and I've been saying this for quite a while, I think liquid staking will form base yield for many products that are designed over the next little while, specifically, financial focused products. One of the challenges in crypto currently, especially with over collateralized lending, where we don't have deposit multipliers like we do in the traditional banking system, it's very difficult to create real yield opportunities in the same way, and where the yield is attractive enough. And so liquid staking really adds a lot to that. So I think we're probably going to see more and more of this. I mean, Lido, looking at Lido as an example, I think they've got 15 billion in locked value or something, or 30 billion or some crazy amount. And their market cap is also in the tens of billions. And so I think, in terms of value capture, there's a lot of value to be captured here still, and there's a lot of opportunity to build, interesting products around liquid staking. There's the liquid staking primitive, and then there's all of these kind of second and third order products that will be built on top of them. Layer 0 being a bridge and messaging system, I think is a natural partner for this. I don't know enough about Tenet to really understand what they're doing, but all in all, I think this is great. I mean, anytime that we hear people entering in the liquid staking space, I think it's amazing. This, to me, I think also will help a lot with restaking. So restaking, EigenLayer is a good example of this. Restaking being where you can use the staked assets of a different chain to secure another chain. So you could have, as an example, you could have 10 different staked assets all securing one blockchain. And you need to be able to bridge those assets to be able to do that. So this is some infrastructure stuff. I think this is really good for the space as a whole. And I do think that, in a couple of years from now, we'll look back and say, wow, liquid staking really was pivotal in terms of product development. Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting here is the concept of cross-chain interoperability with liquid staking. So they're looking at interoperability with 27 different blockchains. And I have heard of the cross-functionality in terms of liquid staking in some of our larger ecosystems like Cosmos, but what does this actually mean? Like, how does this put them in the competitive landscape?
Yeah, sorry. Cosmos, you were asking?
No, the Layer 0 and Tenet, if they are interoperable liquid staking across 27 different blockchains, is that a unique place to be in the liquid staking market, or is this something that everyone in liquid staking is doing?
No, I mean, everybody's trying to find a way to do it, and to a certain extent, but you need reputable bridges and reputable cross-chain messaging systems for this to be viable. And so, I mean, having access to 27 ecosystems, I think Wormhole has access to 23 or 24 ecosystems. So, I mean, I think it's just a natural progression. It's great. That's a lot of ecosystems that are now connected, and I think more to come. And I think we'll see other bridges and cross-chain messaging like Wormhole and eventually CCIP with Chainlink be able to facilitate this also. But I know, actually, I don't know this. I'm pretty sure Layer 0 is the main bridge for EigenLayer, and that's obviously a big deal. There's a lot of assets that'll end up there.
Okay, our last one, I don't actually want to spend the last 2 minutes talking about what refi is, but there's a concept or a term going around right now called regenerative finance. And it's kind of interesting. It's the idea that crypto can realign its values, be more democratic, kind of go back to the roots of DeFi, if you will, and become more of a self-sustaining economic system. So it's regenerative finance. We're able to regenerate ourselves, and we're also able to enter into communities that have been previously unbanked or underserved. And so this was the original concept, as far as I know, for DeFi. It wasn't just get rich and buy Pepe. It had a lot more to do with revolutionizing finance. So I love this concept. I'm probably going to force you to talk about refi on Friday for quite a bit. But what I actually want to address here with our last 2 minutes is all of the different terms that are coming out about crypto right now. So we now have refi, regenerative finance. Some of us still talk about DeFi. Some people talk about it as crypto. Some people talk about it as Web3. There's a lot of different terms, and I'd love to hear from anyone who's tuned in as well, like what your favorite term is right now. Because we use the word blockchain finance a lot, but is that going to cover refi or whatever the next acronym is?
Yeah. This one is interesting. I mean, I totally believe that there's certain supports in society that need to be structured in to help the most vulnerable and so on and so forth. But I also don't believe in equality of outcomes.
Okay. But we're going to talk about that on Friday. We don't have time to talk about that today.
I'm going to F you that like crazy on Friday. But right
terminology-wise.
Go ahead.
But terminology-wise, like what... I don't know. Is this kind of the new thing? Is we're all trying to coin a term that we're going to be famous for? Or is this people still trying to feel out what crypto is actually for? Or are we trying to suffuse regulation by calling ourselves something else? Or I don't know, is refi the new DeFi? Is blockchain finance the new TradFi? Where are we kind of going with all this nomenclature?
Yeah, I don't have a perfect answer for that one.
I hope not.
I feel like there's a bit of an opportunity for certain land grab in different narrative areas. Although I don't agree personally with regenerative finance and what it stands for. I think they're looking at that as an ideology that there's enough people that support it that they can try to carve out a niche for themselves and participate in a new market that they coined all by themselves. So anyways, I think we're going to probably see a lot more of this in terms of like just people coming up with new names. On-chain finance is another one.
Oh yeah.
That's come up a lot lately. We'll see. I mean,
if you're listening and you have a term that you love, I would like to know more about it. I love the idea of regenerative finance. I also love the idea of people referring to the particular sect of finance that they're participating in with like some sort of clever, quippy name. To me, that's like really appealing as a marketer. So if you're part of ReFi, I want to hear about it. If you still identify really strong as DeFi, or if you have like a weird new name, please tell me. I must know.
The other one that, speaking of random terms that people made up, we can FU Friday this one too, is Jack, Twitter Jack, and Web5. I think we've FU.
Oh yeah, we did Web5 a few weeks ago. But that's
another example. That's another example that needs to be FU Friday yet again. Anyways, all right. So thank you all. Thank you all for checking us out and listening. Of course, super excited to continue this and to see more and more joining on all the different venues every single day, which is super great. 12:30 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday, same place. Wherever you're watching now, you can watch again. If you're listening on Twitter Spaces, then you can do that every single day, weekdays, 12:30 Eastern. Like, subscribe, share. If you're on Twitter and you're listening to the replay, please bookmark. It really helps with reach, helps us spread the word, spread the love. And with that, Kiara, go find yourself.
Go find yourself, JD.